Hey, this is Ann. I'm glad you came by. I'm in the process of making jelly, and I'm doing the boiling water bath process right now. So if you wonder what the boiling water bath process is, it's one of the ways that we have of preserving food that we can use at another time, even up to years down the road, they'll be good. So we can either use the pressure canner or the boiling water bath canner. The boiling water bath canner is what we use for jams and jellies, pickles, tomatoes. But for our vegetables, we have to use the pressure canner because the boiling water bath doesn't reach the temperature for the right amount, the high temperature for the right amount of time that low acid foods like most vegetables require. So for this boiling water bath process, we need several things. We need a pot, a boiling water bath canner that's big enough to hold the number of jars that we have in our batch. And it needs to have a flat bottom so it'll sit flat on the stove top. It doesn't really matter for the gas ranges, but for the electric ranges it does. It has to have a flat bottom. So the first thing we do when we're going to can something, any type of food that we're going to can using the boiling water bath canner, is to put the canner on and bring the water, have the water at least filling about half the pot. You need enough water in the pot so that when you put your jars of fruits or vegetables in the canner, it will cover the tops of the jars by at least 1 inch of water. The jar should not be visible above the water. So you need to get that going, get the water boiling to a full rolling boil when you're first starting to cook your food, and then just put a lid on it, reduce the heat, and keep it simmering so that it can come back to a full rolling boil when you need it. So you need the jars that you're going to use, you need the rings and the new lids. Jars and rings can be recycled, the lids cannot, so they have to be new. And you need the canning rack or something to go down in the pot. Now if you don't have a boiling water bath canner that was made for that purpose, you can use any stock pot or large pot that you have that's big enough to hold the water and have room for the water to be at a full rolling boil for the entire time of the process. And if you don't have the rack that holds the jars to keep them from sitting right on the bottom of the pot, then you can substitute. Now, what I'm really using now, because I don't have my boiling water bath canner with me, I'm using a stock pot, and down in the bottom I line the bottom with some rings, some jar rings. And I've seen people put dishcloths down in the bottom, anything to keep them from sitting right on the bottom of the pot. So we need our pot to cook our food in, we need a skillet or some kind of pot to put our jars in to sterilize them. It is said by some of the jar manufacturers now that it's not necessary any longer to sterilize your jars because they sterilize in the boiling water bath, but I always continue to, and a lot of other people do, no matter what kind of food I'm canning, I always sterilize the jars before I put the food into them. So you'll want a pot that you can put 1 to 1 or 1.5 inches of water into, and bring the jars to a full rolling boil and let them boil for 10 minutes to sterilize them. Now there are other methods. Some people use the dishwasher to sterilize their jars, and some people use the oven to sterilize theirs, but I've never used those methods. And I prefer just having them sit in a pot of boiling water for 10 minutes. That way I know it's safe. Then you need another pot of boiling water to put your lids in. They don't have to sit in boiling water for 10 minutes, but they do have to be in hot water long enough to soften the little rubber inserts in the bottom of the lid that will help it get a good seal when it's put on the jar. So I bring my water to a full rolling boil and then drop the lids in, and then turn it down and just let it simmer till I need the lids. Now, I need to check my pot for just a second. Alright, I'm making a pot of jelly, and I need to start my timing process and make sure that I have it in the full rolling boil for 5 minutes. Okay, so you need the pot to cook your food in, the canner, the pot for the lids, the pot for the sterilizing of the jars, and you need a funnel or funnels, depending on what you're doing, and tongs. You need a lid lifter to lift the lids out of the hot water. Now, I don't have my canning supplies with me, so I'm using a fork instead, and it works very well. There are always substitutes and things that you can use. You need measuring cups, measuring spoons, and I use the same measuring cup. I use the kind that you measure all the way to the top. I don't care for the measuring cups with the hash marks. It's too hard to get an accurate measure that way. So I use the same measuring cups for all ingredients, so I know it's measuring the same. You need to have pot holders and dish towels handy. Everything's hot that you're doing, so you need to be very careful and have hot pads or something to protect your hands with. Alright, so you first put your canner on, bring the water to a boil, you sterilize your jars, get your lids, your pot ready for your lids. All this while your food is cooking, whatever kind of food you're cooking and going to preserve. And when the food is done and your jars are sterilized, then you're going to put your food in your jars, put the new lids on, and tighten the ring. Don't over tighten, but tighten it snugly. And then you put your lids down in the boiling water bath can and use the tongs. Be careful because you don't want to get burned. And make sure that your water is at least an inch over the top of the jars in the boiling water bath can. And then bring the water back up to a full rolling boil, and at that time start timing the process. Now for jelly it's 5 minutes, for jam it's 10 minutes, and if you're doing tomatoes it's I forget, I'm thinking it's 30 minutes, but I'm not sure about that. And also, if you're in an altitude, a higher altitude that's higher than 1,000 feet above sea level, I believe, then you need to adjust the times for the food that you're preparing. And So after your food has cooked for the proper amount of time, then you can turn the fire off under your boiling water bath canner. Remove the jars carefully with your tongs and set them in a prepared area, and I keep a thick towel folded on a section of the countertop so that I won't have to move the food for up to 24 hours. At least 12, and it's better if you leave it for 24 hours. Make sure everything cools and seals. You don't want to disturb that seal. But after the 24 hours, you can go ahead and wash the jars and remove the rings if you're going to put the food right into storage. Now, if you're going to gift it or take it somewhere, leave the rings on till you get it to the storage area, because you don't want to disturb the lids. You can take the rings off and reuse them, but if you're taking that food somewhere, then put the rings back on or leave them on. And if you found this video to be helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. Thanks again for stopping by.